The caseworker's pen stopped before Cynthia Sullivan could finish the food stamp form. In the education box, Cynthia had written in small letters, Yale University, B.A. Economics, M.B.A. That degree had once placed her near Damon McConnell, the billionaire who controlled Meridian Crest Financial, a $6.2 billion firm with 12,000 employees and $180 billion under management. One call from him could close every door in her field. Lisa Bowen, the caseworker, did not react to Yale. Food assistance offices saw degrees more often than people guessed, because a degree did not pay rent after a job vanished. Lisa stared 2 lines lower at previous employer and reason for separation. Meridian Crest Financial. Terminated. Performance. Her eyes filled before Cynthia understood why. "I'm sorry," Lisa said, her voice tight. "Can you give me 1 second?"
If a caseworker cried over one line from your old job, would you lean in or brace for something worse?
She turned her monitor away, though Cynthia had already seen a page that was not part of the intake system. Then Lisa stood and left the small room. Cynthia stayed beside Oakley Myers, her 10-year-old son, who kept drawing a house with too many windows. The waiting room beyond the thin door was full. A man 2 chairs away had heard enough through the opening to form an opinion. "Must be nice showing up here with an Ivy League degree," he said. 2 people looked down, while another watched Cynthia as though she had cut the line. Cynthia did not correct him. She had stopped explaining a year earlier after Damon mocked her before senior staff. 18 executives and 9 analysts had watched him slide her report aside. "Yale taught you how to ask expensive questions," he said. "It did not teach you when to stop." Nobody had laughed at first. Damon waited, and Curtis Seymour, Cynthia's boss, gave a small, forced sound. A few others followed because Damon owned the room, the firm, and their next reviews. Then Damon added, "Perhaps simpler numbers would suit you better." Cynthia had gathered her pages while everyone studied the table. Now she said, "It's fine," though no one had asked. Oakley pressed a green crayon against his paper until the tip broke. He looked at her, then covered the broken mark with a square bush. Cynthia rubbed the small ridge between his shoulders and faced the closed door. 15 minutes passed. Another caseworker looked out once, found Cynthia, and pulled back. A supervisor walked past twice with a folder tucked against her chest. People shifted, checked phones, and watched the same door. Oakley added a second chimney to the house because he had run out of things to draw. When Lisa returned, her eyes were red. Her voice was steady, and she did not explain the delay. She sat, lowered her hands beneath the desk, and asked whether Cynthia knew Sean Terry. She said he had worked at Meridian Crest and left near the time Cynthia did. Cynthia searched her memory. Meridian Crest had filled 3 towers and used employee numbers more often than names. She had never met Sean. Before she could answer fully, Lisa looked at Oakley's drawing and then back at the form. "That's my son," Lisa said. "He doesn't work there anymore either." The words changed the room. Cynthia leaned forward, then stopped herself, unsure whether the right move was to ask or wait. Lisa closed the intake screen and said she could not finish the appointment. She rescheduled Cynthia for 5 days later and wrote a direct number on the back of a benefits brochure. Caseworkers were not meant to hand clients private lines. Cynthia knew that without being told. Lisa apologized then, properly, but offered no reason. She only asked Cynthia not to call before the new appointment unless something urgent changed. Be honest. If a stranger processing your food stamp application asked about someone from your old job with tears in her eyes, would you lean in or would you brace for something worse? Cynthia took the brochure and left with Oakley. The bus pulled away before they reached the stop, so they waited 23 minutes beside a closed pharmacy. Oakley did not complain. He folded his drawing twice and put it inside his school folder where a forgotten permission form already waited for her signature. At home, he asked why the lady had been sad. Cynthia filled a pot with water, checked the nearly empty cabinet, and said she did not know. It was the truest answer she had. She made noodles, cut one apple into thin pieces, and told him the next appointment would be easier. Nothing had been easy for 9 months. Meridian Crest had fired her after 11 years, using one page and the word performance. Every job search since then had followed the same path. The first interview went well, the second went better, and then the reference check stretched from 2 days into 2 weeks. Offers disappeared without being withdrawn. Recruiters stopped returning messages. One hiring manager had sounded embarrassed while saying the team had changed direction, though Cynthia later saw the role posted again. She had stopped being surprised and started being certain that something moved beyond her view. Her savings lasted 4 months. There was no second income in the apartment. Severance carried them through 6. A part-time bookkeeping job at a local appliance warehouse now paid 1/3 of her old salary, even with extra Saturday hours. She had managed 8-figure portfolios, yet she counted bus fare before buying laundry soap. 2 days after the intake visit, the food benefit was approved. It covered groceries, not the growing gap beneath everything else. Oakley needed new glasses, and his old prescription was 9 months out of date. He had started squinting at the classroom board without telling her. Cynthia learned from a note sent home by his teacher. Oakley had folded it behind a math sheet, not to hide it well, but to delay the talk. When she asked why, he kept erasing one answer that was already correct. He said the glasses still worked if he sat closer. She booked the eye exam anyway. The clinic wanted a deposit she did not have until Friday. Cynthia moved the electric payment by 3 days and hoped the late fee would be small. That night, her coffee went cold while she compared 4 numbers that refused to fit. The phone rang at 9:17. Lisa's number appeared, though their appointment was still 3 days away. Cynthia looked toward Oakley's room and answered in a low voice. Lisa said she was off the clock, off the record, and risking her job by calling. She told the story in careful pieces. Sean had worked at Meridian Crest 2 years before Cynthia joined the firm's portfolio controls group. He had served in a different department and earned top reviews for 11 straight quarters. Then he questioned an unusual client fee entry and was fired within 3 weeks. His letter said performance. He had no warning at all, Lisa said. Sean applied across finance for a year, reaching final interviews again and again. After reference checks, each chance died in the same quiet way Cynthia knew. He stopped applying, Lisa said. Her next breath took longer. He stopped a lot of things. He is alive. Some days, that is the only clean sentence I have. Cynthia held the phone tighter. She felt anger first because anger gave her something useful to do. Lisa warned her not to contact Sean and not to use his name. She had called only because the pattern was too exact to ignore. Cynthia promised to think before acting. She meant it when she said it. 10 minutes later, she opened her old Meridian Crest files, searched public records, and found Curtis Seymour's personal email on a charity board page. Her promise began to feel like delay, and delay felt dangerous. She wrote too fast. She described a hidden blacklist carried through back-channel reference calls. She listed her own failed offers, Sean's name, his firing, and Lisa's account. Then she demanded that Curtis confirm or deny the practice within 48 hours, or she would contact a journalist. The email was not wrong about the pattern. It was wrong in a more human way. Sean had never agreed to become proof, and Lisa had trusted Cynthia with his private pain. Cynthia read the message once, saw every reason to wait, and pressed send anyway. Curtis forwarded it to Meridian Crest's legal department before sunrise. By 9 the next morning, Sean received a call from a number he did not know. The caller asked pointed questions about a former employee's allegations. They knew his dates, his title, and the exact compliance issue he had raised. Sean ended the call and phoned Lisa. He wanted to know why people from his old firm had his name again. A year of careful quiet had been opened without his consent. Lisa listened, then called Cynthia before anger could turn into something harder to repair. With one email that might prove the pattern, would you have sent it too? Would you have done it knowing someone else's private wound would be pulled back into the light without permission? Lisa did not raise her voice. That made the call worse. She explained that Sean had slept only 2 hours and had unplugged his phone. She had spent 14 months helping him build a life where Meridian Crest did not arrive through every unknown number. Cynthia apologized at once. She did not defend the email or explain that she had been scared. She said she had used Sean's name without asking, and that was hers to own. Lisa accepted the words, but not the comfort Cynthia hoped they might create. "You do not get to make him useful," Lisa said, "not even for something true." Then she ended the call because her morning shift had started. Cynthia sat at the kitchen table, staring at Oakley's unsigned permission form. She signed the wrong line, crossed it out, and signed again. At 10, a Meridian Crest lawyer called. He said the firm considered her claims false and harmful. He warned her to preserve all records, stop contacting current employees, and avoid repeating private personnel information. Cynthia asked whether that warning also applied to the people calling Sean. The lawyer paused, then returned to his script. He would not answer questions about Sean or reference checks. He offered an email address for future contact and ended the call. 15 minutes later, Cynthia's old employee portal stopped accepting her login, though it had worked the night before. She had already downloaded her reviews. All 11 years were marked strong or exceptional, including the quarter before her firing. She placed them in date order and compared the language. The same leaders who praised her judgment in March had called her unreliable in April, without naming one failed task. Cynthia built a simple table. She listed each job application, interview date, recruiter message, reference check date, and final response. 12 applications had reached the final stage. 10 disappeared within 3 business days of Meridian Crest receiving a verification request. 2 others ended before formal checks, but both hiring managers had shared a former Meridian Crest executive in their networks. Cynthia could not prove a call had happened. Still, the dates formed a shape that random rejection did not. Her old work had taught her to distrust stories until the numbers held. She called 3 recruiters. The first said company policy blocked discussion. The second remembered her but claimed the hiring file had been archived. The third hesitated when Cynthia asked whether Meridian Crest had supplied more than title and dates. That recruiter said only that the reference had raised concerns. Cynthia asked what kind. The answer became careful and thin. The recruiter said she should speak with her former employer, then ended the call before Cynthia could ask whether the concern had been written down. Cynthia opened an old staff directory she had kept for emergency contacts. Meridian Crest's official verification line ended in 4100, but one recruiter's saved voicemail named an extension ending in 7732. That extension belonged to employee risk, not human resources. Andy McGrath's office had used it before her firing. She called the main switchboard and asked for employment verification without giving her name. The operator transferred her to 4100, exactly as policy required. When Cynthia asked what department held 7732, the operator became guarded and said internal extensions were private. The answer proved nothing. But the wrong line now had a place on her chart. Oakley came home needing cardboard for a school bridge project. Cynthia had forgotten to buy it, so they cut a cereal box into flat panels and tested strips across 2 soup cans. The first bridge bent under 3 coins. Oakley changed the folds and made the next one hold 11. Cynthia watched him record the failed test instead of hiding it. She returned to her table and added a column called Limits. Beside the extension, she wrote that the number linked to employee risk in an old directory, but no call content was known. Stating what she could not prove made the facts she did have easier to trust. Curtis did not reply within 48 hours. Instead, Meridian Crest sent a formal demand through its legal team. It ordered Cynthia to retract her accusation and destroy any confidential company material. She owned no secret files, only reviews, emails, and her own work notes. Damon's name appeared on none of the letters. His authority sat behind every page. The law firm representing Meridian Crest had offices in 6 states and more attorneys than Cynthia's whole appliance warehouse had workers. She had $43 available after the iClinic deposit. Cynthia almost deleted the message thread. She opened Lisa's number instead, then stopped before calling. An apology did not grant another request. She sent one text saying Sean's name would never leave her again without his direct consent. Lisa answered hours later. She wrote that she had shown him the apology and nothing more. Cynthia placed the phone down and returned to her table. She began mapping every compliance question she had raised during her final month. The first involved a client fee coded as optional when the account agreement made it automatic. The second involved reports that showed lower fee rates than some clients had paid. Cynthia had asked Curtis for source records. He told her the issue belonged to another team. She did not let it go. She compared statements from 6 accounts and found the same mismatch. At a review meeting, Damon asked why Portfolio Controls was delaying a profitable product update. Cynthia said the disclosure language did not match the charged amount. That was the meeting where he mocked Yale. Curtis issued her first negative note the next morning. 9 days later, her system access was reduced. 3 weeks after that, she was escorted out with a termination letter and a box that held 2 coffee mugs. The timeline was clear, but it was still one person's timeline. Cynthia needed another name, and she had lost the right to ask Sean. She searched professional pages for former Meridian Crest employees who had left during her final 3 years. Hundreds had moved on normally. A smaller group had no new finance role listed. Some profiles ended without explanation. Others showed sudden moves into retail, tutoring, or nothing at all. Cynthia marked possible matches, then refused to contact them because guessing at pain could cause more harm. That evening, Oakley tried his new glasses at the clinic. He blinked at the wall chart and read the last line without leaning forward. The frames were dark blue and slightly too wide. He chose them because the cheaper pair pinched his ears. At the payment desk, Cynthia's card failed. She had moved money for the deposit, but the electric charge had posted early. The clerk let her split the amount across 2 cards. Oakley studied a rack of lens cloths and acted as if he had not noticed. They left without taking the glasses because the balance remained. On the bus, Oakley held the empty case the clinic had given him. He opened it twice and closed it carefully. Cynthia promised they would return Friday, but she did not say how. Curtis's email arrived at 11:46 that night. It contained no greeting and no apology. He wrote that he had not created the document, could not verify its current use, and would deny sending it if asked. One spreadsheet was attached. Cynthia did not open it at once. She called Lisa, knowing the hour and knowing she might not answer. Lisa picked up on the 4th ring. Cynthia said Curtis had sent something and she wanted Lisa present before she looked for Sean's name. They opened separate copies while staying on the phone. The sheet tracked employees terminated across 3 years under nearly identical performance language. 14 names appeared. Beside each was a column labeled "Do Not Re-Reference." Flag. Sean Terry was number 6. Cynthia Sullivan was number 14. Under a notes field, every person had a short entry tied to the weeks before termination. Each had questioned a compliance issue, flagged a mismatch, or refused to approve a transaction. The board was still warm beneath Cynthia's hand. It was never performance. Lisa made one sound, then went quiet. Cynthia read the rows twice and checked hidden columns, formulas, creation dates, and revision details. The file showed that Curtis had edited some entries, but an HR leadership account had created the flag field 2 years earlier. One cell carried initials Cynthia knew. They belonged to Andy McGrath, Meridian Crest's head of employee risk. Another tab listed approved reference language, including phrases about poor judgment, weak collaboration, and trust concerns. None was meant for an official letter. The mystery of 9 months closed in one spreadsheet. Cynthia knew why offers had vanished and why Sean had stopped getting callbacks. A larger question replaced it at once. Who had ordered Andy to build the flag, and how many careers had it ended beyond those 14 rows? Cynthia asked Curtis why he sent the file. His answer came 20 minutes later. He said legal staff had questioned his handling of her termination, and he would not carry decisions made above him. He was not helping her so much as moving danger away from himself. She saved the original file in 3 places and printed a copy at the 24-hour copy shop. She recorded the email headers and made a screen video of the attachment opening. These steps did not create a clean chain of custody. They kept the firm from erasing what she had received. By noon, the appliance warehouse changed her schedule without warning. Her Saturday hours disappeared first. An hour later, the owner said slower sales required cuts, and her part-time role was ending. He would not look at her while she packed a calculator and a half-used roll of mints. The warehouse had no link to finance. Cynthia could not prove Meridian Crest had touched it. Yet the timing arrived the same week its legal team learned where she worked from a form attached to her email signature. She wrote down the facts without writing down the conclusion. Karina Roberts, an employment attorney, gave her a free consultation the next day. Karina read the spreadsheet, the warning letters, and the reference timeline. A true pattern can still fail if nobody can prove the calls, Karina said. A leaked sheet without a clean source could be called fake. 14 names helped, but only if some people spoke. Severance agreements might limit what they could share, though they could still discuss unlawful conduct with proper counsel. Karina warned that fear would block more doors than law. Cynthia contacted 5 people using brief messages. 2 never replied. One said the past had already cost a marriage and would not be reopened. Another wrote that a severance NDA controlled every word, then deleted the account before Cynthia could respond. The 5th asked for proof, received one blurred image, and said it could be made in minutes. Cynthia understood the doubt. She had spent her career rejecting claims without support. This time, the support existed, but the people most harmed by it had been trained not to trust evidence. A small industry blog heard about the allegation through an unknown source. It ran a vague item with no names and no document. Meridian Crest answered in 2 sentences. The firm did not comment on personnel matters and categorically denied any pattern of retaliatory practices. The item vanished beneath market news within a day. No larger outlet followed. Damon appeared at an investor dinner that evening and called the allegation a failed worker's excuse when someone asked him near a crowded entrance. Executives beside him smiled, and several employees lowered their eyes. His lawyers sent the clip to Cynthia with another warning. Damon had mocked her in public again, while hiding behind claims that she was the one causing harm. Cynthia watched once, saved it, and did not answer. Anger was evidence only when it led somewhere. Lisa faced consequences too. Her supervisor had found the after-hours contact in a routine review. She received a formal warning for crossing a client boundary and was moved from intake work to a back desk with no public contact. The choice had been human, but the rule still existed. Oakley's glasses arrived a week late after the second payment bounced. Cynthia borrowed from next month's rent and collected them. He wore them home in both hands when the arms felt loose. That night, he cleaned the lenses before placing them beside his bed. Cynthia sat at the kitchen table with 14 rows printed before her. She had the truth, but not enough proof to make it hold in public. Her phone lit with a name she had never expected to see. Sean Terry was calling her directly. Cynthia let the phone ring once more before answering. Sean's voice was flat and controlled. He said Lisa had shown him the spreadsheet, even though Cynthia had asked her not to share more. Lisa had decided the row belonged to him before it belonged to anyone's plan. He did not call to yell. That almost made Cynthia wish he had. He said he had spent a year treating each rejection as proof that he had become less capable. Now a column in a hidden file gave that year a different name. I spent a year thinking I just wasn't good enough anymore, he said. Turns out I was good enough to get flagged. He paused, then added that Cynthia's email had still been wrong. Truth did not cancel consent. Cynthia agreed. She offered to remove his name from every copy she shared. Sean said hiding it again would not restore what had already happened. He wanted to speak on record, not because of her email, and he made that point clear. Lisa had asked him to consider it. More than that, he was tired of the private version being the only version. He said he could discuss his reviews, the fee question, his firing, and the failed applications. He would not describe his worst months for public use. Cynthia accepted the limit. She asked what he needed before any interview. Sean wanted every quote read back for accuracy and no photos taken at his home. He also wanted Lisa's job kept out of the story unless she chose otherwise. They spent an hour making a clean timeline. Cynthia did not lead him toward her own facts. She asked dates, saved source messages, and marked places where memory was uncertain. When his dates matched the spreadsheet without prompting, the document gained weight. Sean still had rejection emails from 6 firms. 3 mentioned delayed verification. One recruiter had written that a former employer raised judgment and trust concerns, the same approved phrase in the hidden tab. That message linked the spreadsheet language to an actual hiring result. Cynthia sent the package to Karina. The attorney said it was better, but one witness might still be dismissed as a shared grievance. They needed independent support, preferably from someone who had heard the reference language from the hiring side. Cynthia returned to the 14 rows. She did not send a mass plea. Instead, she built a 1-page chart with only verified dates and no private notes. Each person received the row tied to that person, plus a request to correct any error. The message asked for nothing else. 2 people replied by morning. One had left finance and managed a family hardware store. The other still worked in the industry and feared losing a second career. Both said their rows were accurate. The former employee outside finance agreed to use a name in the article, but asked not to be interviewed on camera. The person still inside finance would speak anonymously about a reference check handled while working for a later employer. That witness had heard Meridian Crest use the exact phrase about trust concerns. Cynthia found the path Karina had said was missing. She asked the anonymous witness to describe only the later hiring call, not confidential work at Meridian Crest. She asked the other witness to bring personal reviews and rejection messages, not company files. Their severance terms could not turn facts from later employers into Meridian Crest secrets. Karina reviewed that approach and said it reduced risk, though nothing removed it. Legitimate patent and authorship verification processes protect real inventors, she explained, and verified independent employment records protect honest workers in the same basic way. The problem was not review itself. The problem was a hidden record built to defeat fair review. Bobby McCann, the journalist who had let the vague blog item die, called within an hour of receiving the second package. Bobby covered finance from a small national desk and had ignored the first item because it offered accusation without support. This time, there were names, source records, and 3 accounts. Bobby asked Cynthia whether Curtis would confirm the file. Cynthia said he would deny sending it. She supplied email headers, attachment details, and a screen recording instead. Bobby's technical team found signs that the spreadsheet had come from a Meridian Crest system, but could not prove who exported it. The reporter contacted all 14 people. 7 did not respond. 2 declined. 2 said the rows looked right but would not be quoted. The 3 already cooperating stayed in. Meridian Crest received a detailed request for comment. Its legal team answered with threats aimed at the outlet and each named source. The lawyers argued that the document was altered, the witnesses were disgruntled, and Cynthia had spread private information. They did not explain the matching reference phrase in a later recruiter's email. Damon made another public comment outside a conference. "A degree does not make every complaint intelligent," he said while employees and cameras watched. "Some people fail and need a larger story." The clip spread farther than the blog item because cruelty was easier to share than a spreadsheet. Cynthia hated that the insult helped. Bobby said public interest in Damon's words gave the investigation time to breathe. The editor approved a longer piece, but required one more day for legal review. Publication was set for the morning of Meridian Crest's quarterly earnings call. If speaking up means someone who never agreed to join the fight gets pulled back into the worst year again, do you still ask? Cynthia had asked badly once. The second time, she gave each person a clear exit and waited for an answer she could not control. Oakley's school counselor called that afternoon. He had stopped turning in reading logs, even though he completed the books. The counselor thought he feared asking Cynthia to sign anything. She suggested 3 low-cost sessions to help him speak about the changes at home. Cynthia booked them and missed the first bus afterward. She and Oakley walked 6 blocks from the next stop, carrying groceries in thin bags. He talked about a science project, then changed the subject when the bag handle stretched. Cynthia let him carry the bread and took the cans. The night before publication, a lawyer she had never met sent a settlement offer. Meridian Crest would pay Cynthia $186,000. It would also correct her internal separation code, provide a neutral reference, and cover 6 months of health insurance. The offer required a full NDA. Cynthia had to retract every claim of coordinated retaliation, stop contact with the other 13 names, surrender the spreadsheet, and state that any pattern she described was a personal interpretation. She would also agree not to assist future reporting. The number was larger than her remaining debts. It could cover a year of rent, Oakley's glasses, counseling, school costs, and the overdue electric balance twice over. It could place money back in savings before the next rent notice arrived. Karina said the offer was real and unusually fast. She also said accepting it could end Cynthia's part of the story. The other sources might continue, but Meridian Crest would call her silence proof that the central claim had collapsed. Cynthia had until 8 the next morning. She printed the offer and placed it face down. Oakley sat across from her, doing fractions in his new glasses. One arm of the frames had loosened, so he pushed them up with his finger every few minutes. Are we going to be okay? Cynthia had given him managed answers for 9 months. She had promised things would settle, work would come, and bills would fit. This time, she looked at the small screw beside his temple and did not offer certainty. I don't know yet, she said, but I'm not going to stop trying to find out. Oakley considered that, nodded, and returned to the same fraction. His pencil moved more slowly, but it kept moving. After he slept, Cynthia read the settlement again. She imagined paying every bill by Friday. She also imagined Sean opening a news story and finding that her name had disappeared after his became public. The easiest choice was no longer private. At 6:40 the next morning, Cynthia called Sean before calling the lawyer. She told him the amount, every condition, and what her silence might do to the story. She said that if he wanted her to take it, she would, because he had already given more than she had any right to request. Sean did not answer at once. A kitchen cabinet closed on his end. Then he said, I didn't say my name out loud again so you could go quiet for money. Do the story. I'll be there. Cynthia reminded him that he might face new calls and lost chances. Sean said he knew. He did not forgive the first email again, and she did not ask him to. They ended with a practical plan for handling press requests. At 7:15, Cynthia declined the settlement. She wrote that she would not retract supported facts or abandon contact with people whose consent she now had. She offered to return no document because the firm had not proved ownership. Karina reviewed the message before it went. Bobby's story published at 8:02. It named Cynthia, Sean, and the former employee now outside finance. It described the anonymous hiring site account, showed part of the spreadsheet, and linked the flag language to later reference calls. Meridian Crest did not answer the final request before publication. The story changed something within minutes. Larger finance sites repeated the core facts. Former employees sent private tips to Bobby. One analyst on Meridian Crest's earnings call forwarded the article to the reporter beside him. Cynthia watched the call from her kitchen table. Oakley was at school. Lisa and Sean watched from Lisa's living room, sitting together for the first time since his decision to speak. Bobby joined the public call from a newsroom with Cynthia's evidence chart open beside her. The scripted remarks covered revenue, costs, and growth. Kane Jacobs, Meridian Crest's chief financial officer, sounded calm. Damon appeared by video for opening comments, praised company discipline, and left before questions. His absence felt planned. Partway through the question period, Bobby broke format. She asked Kane to address the personnel tracking document, especially the do not re-reference column applied to 14 former employees. Kane went silent for 2 full seconds. Dead air held across the live stream. Kane began with the answer his lawyers had prepared. He said Meridian Crest was aware of the report and took all personnel concerns seriously. He called the spreadsheet unverified and promised to protect former employees from careless public claims. Then he tried to move to the next analyst. Bobby did not yield the line. She read the column header aloud and named the count. 14 former employees had received the same flag, and 3 had now described the same reference pattern. Kane repeated that the firm would review any credible information. Cynthia heard the escape in his answer. He was treating the sheet as an HR problem, separate from the compliance questions listed beside every name. She pulled her printed chart closer and traced the notes column with one finger. Each firing followed a question about money, approval, or disclosure. Bobby sent a message while Kane spoke. She asked what single fact he was avoiding. Cynthia typed, erased a longer reply, and looked again at the 14 rows. Her thumb rested against the cracked edge of her phone case. She pressed send. 14 people asked questions. 14 people got the same 2 words on their termination letters. What was in the questions your company didn't want answered? Kane had no ready version of the truth. The call stayed quiet long enough for analysts to stop typing. Then he said Meridian Crest would conduct an internal review. It was the sentence left when every safer sentence had run out. Bobby asked whether the review would include the fee disclosures named in several rows. Kane said the scope had not been set. Another reporter asked whether Damon knew about the flag list. The call moderator ended the question period 3 minutes early. Cynthia did not celebrate. She saved the full recording, the official transcript, and the company's posted slides. Then she marked the time of Kane's promise. An internal review could still be narrowed, delayed, or hidden unless someone kept its scope public. Bobby published a follow-up within 40 minutes. It included Cynthia's question and linked each known compliance concern to the termination dates. The clip spread because the number was easy to understand. 14 questions, 14 performance letters, 1 hidden flag. Meridian Crest's lawyers moved fast. They demanded removal of the spreadsheet image and threatened claims against Bobby's outlet. They also renewed the settlement offer to Cynthia, adding $20,000 and a promise to fund Oakley's counseling through the year. Cynthia declined again. She did not mention the added money to Oakley. She sent the demand letter to Karina and added it to a public evidence index that contained dates, document descriptions, and redacted personal details. The original files stayed private for legal review. That index was Cynthia's next move. She knew the firm could attack one leaked document. It was harder to dismiss a chain of ordinary records that matched it. Reviews, termination dates, recruiter emails, call logs, and fee questions. She arranged them so any reader could follow the sequence. Sean checked his entries and corrected one interview date. The former hardware store manager found a calendar invitation from the week before termination. The anonymous hiring witness supplied a sworn statement through Karina without revealing a current employer publicly. Small corrections made the package stronger, not weaker. Damon appeared on a business program that afternoon. He called the story Coordinated Defamation by Former Workers Seeking Payment. The host asked why the firm had offered no explanation for the flag column. Damon said lawyers had advised him not to discuss stolen material. He then aimed at Cynthia. She had chances most people never get, he said. A Yale degree, a senior role, and generous severance. Failure does not become integrity because it finds a camera. The program's staff, investors, and other guests heard him. One guest looked down at the desk. Another asked whether a senior leader should discuss a former employee that way during an active review. Damon answered a different question. Cynthia watched the clip without sound after the first play. She wrote down his exact claim about generous severance and placed her agreement beside it. The document showed 12 weeks, standard for her level, with no special payment. She did not post a wounded reply. Instead, she added a short statement to the evidence index. It said the issue was not whether she had once held a good job. The issue was whether Meridian Crest used hidden reference flags to punish workers for raising verified compliance concerns. Then she listed the records supporting that question. The board of Meridian Crest announced an outside review the next morning. The statement named an independent accounting team and separate employment counsel. It promised findings to a special committee, though it did not promise public release. Investors began asking for that missing promise. Cynthia wrote to the special committee through its published address. She asked for 3 safeguards: preservation of reference call records, direct interviews with all 14 employees, and review of the fee systems mentioned in the notes column. She copied Bobby so the request could not vanish quietly. The committee acknowledged receipt but made no commitment. 2 days later, Meridian Crest disabled old voicemail archives and said the change was part of routine storage limits. Cynthia noticed the timing in a technical notice forwarded by a current employee. She alerted Karina, who sent a preservation demand. That demand did not solve the case. It blocked one easy loss of evidence. The firm restored access to the archive while counsel reviewed what had been scheduled for deletion. Several reference calls had no recordings, but call routing logs still showed who placed them and when. Cynthia compared those logs with the 14 hiring timelines. 11 people had Meridian Crest outgoing calls within 48 hours of a failed application. 7 calls came from employee risk, the department Andy led. 4 came from senior human resources lines. The calls alone did not reveal words. The recruiter email and anonymous witness supplied language for 2. Together, the records showed a process rather than random gossip. Cynthia prepared a chart that separated proven facts, supported inferences, and unknowns. Karina told her that distinction mattered. Public claims often failed because people treated every belief as proven. Cynthia's chart did the opposite. It showed where evidence ended, which made the supported parts harder to attack. Lisa followed the news from her back desk. Her warning remained in her file, and her supervisor refused a request to return her to intake. She had crossed a boundary, even for a reason that now looked important. Rules could be fair in purpose and still land hard in one case. She called Cynthia only during lunch. Their talks stayed brief and practical. Lisa said Sean had answered 2 reporter emails without shutting down afterward. She did not call that healing or progress. At home, Oakley attended his first counseling session. On the ride back, he asked whether Cynthia had beaten the company. She said no, because a question on a live stream was not a result. He seemed relieved by the plain answer and asked whether they could get fries. They split a small order from McDonald's at the bus station. Oakley lined the longest fries beside each other before eating them. Cynthia checked her phone only once. The special committee had agreed to interview the 14. 3 refused. 2 asked to answer in writing. 9 agreed to live interviews with counsel present. Cynthia went first and brought her evidence chart, not the leaked file, because she wanted the record to stand, even if the spreadsheet was challenged. The reviewers asked why she had raised the fee issue. Cynthia explained the portfolio system in simple steps. A client-facing report labeled one fee optional, while the billing engine charged it automatically. The mismatch repeated after a records migration and appeared across accounts. She had found it by reconciling totals that should have matched. The difference was small on one statement and large across years. Her request had been to correct the mapping, notify affected clients, and review past charges. Curtis told her to stop delaying the product update. Sean described a similar issue from 2 years earlier. His department saw fees grouped under a code that lowered their visible rate. He asked for the source agreement and received no answer. 3 weeks later, his access ended. Other interviews filled gaps. The hardware store manager had refused to approve a summary with a mismatched total. Another former worker had questioned why an automatic fee appeared under a voluntary services label. Different roles had touched the same system problem. The review passed week 3. Meridian Crest offered no public update. Damon stopped giving interviews, while the company's lawyers argued over the scope of fee records. Cynthia kept the question alive through weekly factual posts that added no claim beyond the documents. At week 4, a current employee sent Bobby a public-facing fee guide from before the migration and one from after. The wording had changed, but billing rules had not. Bobby verified both through archived client pages. Cynthia added them to her reconciliation model. She calculated sample differences only from records lawfully supplied by former clients through counsel. The totals showed that the issue could not be dismissed as display formatting. People had paid amounts that did not match the way some fees were described. Exact company-wide totals still required internal data. Meridian Crest tried a third settlement. This offer included a corrected record for all 14, but only if the group signed separate NDAs and accepted no finding of retaliation. Cynthia shared it with every person rather than deciding for them. 4 considered taking it. She did not pressure them. Rent, health costs, and lost years were not moral tests. 2 eventually accepted private payments for individual claims without retracting their facts. Their choices narrowed what they could say, but did not erase records already given to the review. By week 6, the special committee had enough to issue findings. It scheduled a board meeting and informed the 14 that reclassification decisions would follow. Cynthia received the notice while tightening the loose screw on Oakley's glasses. The results still had not been made public. The committee did not release its report that morning. It first sent short letters to the 14 former employees. Cynthia's letter said her termination would be reviewed under a corrected authorship and conduct process with outside verification of who raised each compliance issue. The word performance remained for the moment. Cynthia called Karina, then Sean. Neither had received the final finding. Bobby learned that Meridian Crest planned a brief statement after markets closed, when fewer reporters would be watching. Cynthia posted the committee's 6-week deadline and asked whether the promised review would include public results. Investors repeated the question. The company moved its statement to noon. It admitted that employee risk flags had been applied without a documented appeal process and had influenced some reference responses. It also said the fee disclosure findings had been referred for outside regulatory review. The system problem was fixable. During a records migration, automatic client fees had been mapped into a category used for optional services. Internal teams found the mismatch, but leaders kept the cheaper wording while the billing engine continued charging the old amounts. The 14 employees had touched parts of that same conflict. The review found no valid performance basis for most terminations. It also found that the hidden flag process had lacked independent approval, clear limits, and a way to challenge false entries. Andy's department had maintained the list while senior leaders had received reports about the people on it. The public report did not state that Damon ordered each flag. It showed that his office had been briefed on the program and on Cynthia's fee questions before he mocked her. His public claim that she had invented a larger story no longer held. His power had protected the machine until public records made protection more costly. Regulators examined the mismarked fee disclosures. Meridian Crest later settled the client fee matter without admitting every internal allegation by name. It agreed to repay affected accounts, correct disclosure systems, preserve authorship records, and use independent review for future retaliation claims. The 14 terminations were reopened one by one. 11 were reclassified, including Cynthia's and Sean's. Their official files now said separation following a disputed compliance matter, not poor performance. Meridian Crest also ended the do not re-reference process and limited references to verified records. That correction did not restore lost years. Cynthia's old applications did not return. Some firms still saw her name beside headlines and chose easier candidates. The industry remembered accusation faster than correction. Still, the silence changed. Recruiters who had vanished began answering emails. Two apologized without naming what they had heard. One hiring manager reopened a role but offered less pay than Cynthia's experience supported. Cynthia turned it down. 6 months earlier, she might have accepted from fear. Now she asked for the written job scope, decision rights, and compliance reporting line. The firm would not provide them, so she kept looking. Lisa remained at the back desk. Her warning stayed in her personnel file because she had contacted a client after hours and shared private family information. The larger truth did not erase that boundary. Her supervisor offered a training role, but no return to intake. Lisa accepted the training role after 2 days of doubt. She would teach new staff how to notice distress without crossing the lines she had crossed. She said the outcome was worth the cost. She did not say it proudly or sadly. She said it while sorting forms. Sean's correction took longer to reach hiring databases. Meridian Crest sent the change, but 2 screening vendors still carried the old flag language. Cynthia helped him compare reports and file disputes using the committee letter. One record changed in 10 days, the other in 31. He started applying again in small numbers. 2 jobs a week, not 20. He stopped after each application and took a walk before opening another. Lisa did not ask for updates unless he offered them. Oakley finished his counseling sessions. He still forgot reading logs, though now he handed Cynthia the blank forms instead of folding them behind homework. The loose arm on his glasses needed tightening every Sunday. He learned to hold the tiny screw over a white towel so it would not disappear. 2 months after the report, Cynthia interviewed at a smaller investment firm in Western Connecticut. The title was lower and the portfolio smaller. During the final meeting, she asked what happened when an employee challenged a client disclosure. The answer included a written review path and outside escalation. She asked to see the policy. The interviewer blinked, then brought it from a shared drive. Cynthia read the appeal section before discussing salary. The firm offered the job the next afternoon. Her first Tuesday began with forms, passwords, and a security badge that failed twice. She missed the earlier bus and arrived 7 minutes before orientation. No one treated the delay as a character flaw. A receptionist reset the badge and pointed her toward a plain conference room. That afternoon, Cynthia picked Oakley up from school. He waited near the apartment building in his dark blue glasses, holding a drawing. It showed the same house with too many windows that he had drawn in the food assistant's office. This version had a name on the mailbox. A car sat in the driveway, though Cynthia still rode the bus. Oakley did not explain the change or ask whether the car would come later. He handed her the page. Cynthia placed it on the refrigerator beside the first drawing. The old house had 2 chimneys and a covered crayon mark near the bush. The new one had 1 chimney, a mailbox, and careful straight lines. She left both where they could be seen. Months later, she entered a different office building on a clear Monday morning. Her badge worked on the first try. The lobby had nothing to do with Meridian Crest, and no one there knew the sound of Kane's 2 seconds of silence. Her phone buzzed before the elevator arrived. Lisa had sent a message during a break, still bending a small rule by using the direct number first shared at intake. Cynthia read it while holding Oakley's 2 drawings inside a thin folder. He got a call back today, first one in over a year. Cynthia typed one word, good. She meant the callback, the corrected record, and Sean's choice to try again. She also meant the cost of saying no when silence had offered fast relief. The elevator opened, and she put the phone away before stepping inside. Cynthia had an easier ending available. The settlement offered a signature, a year of rent, paid counseling, new glasses, and silence about 13 people she had never met. It could have fixed her own kitchen table by the end of that week. Instead, she called Lisa's son before she called the lawyer. She asked what he wanted and let his answer cost her the fastest way out. The company was finally cornered on a live stream it could not edit, but that was not the hardest choice. Would you have taken the settlement, fixed your own home, and left 13 names buried in a spreadsheet? Or would you have turned it down without knowing whether the story would matter? Tell me which choice you would make and why. When silence from an employer does not add up, ask one more question. Am I the only name on that list?
One hidden flag erased 14 careers. Comment your thoughts and subscribe to Malric Coleman for more hard-earned justice.